National Raceway and Fords of Jeff Burton and Kurt Busch top the chart. No surprise there. How about Kenny Wallace there in third? There's a look at Burton. Let's have a look at that Ford, Darrell.
Yeah, it looks pretty good, and he's right there, like you said. I've had a good feeling about Jeff all weekend based on the way he ran at Martinsville. He had a top 5 finish there, one of his best runs of the year. Matter of fact, one of his best runs in quite a while, and he's right there again tonight, and I think he's going to be somebody to deal with tomorrow night.
147 miles an hour at the end of that straightaway.
Oh, that's the thing that just don't realize how fast this front straightaway is. You just got such a huge sweeping front straightaway where you can get a lot of speed, and then you got to whoa it up down there in the middle of turns 1 and 2. And if Larry and I have talked about it, if you miss your mark here and you get up in that slick sealer that's above, you can see right where the cars have been running, and they got to run there.
You know, the thing I noticed that was interesting, you're back, whoa, look at that. That's a slide right there, and he decides to come in.
And here's the other thing that Mark Martin said. Everything's fine. Car feels good, but when it goes, look out, baby. There's no warning.
It was almost, Darrell, like he was describing the first season on radial tires.
Yeah, like you're going, you got grip, but when that thing started to slip a little bit, it went out from under you so quickly you couldn't catch it. You know, Mike, one of the things that I love, there's so many things about our sport I do love, but one of the things that just kills me, and it just is something that we've got to, and that can't ever figure out how to deal with, is when somebody like Jerry Nadeau gets hurt. He's gone to the hospital, and you look down there, and they've got a backup car, and they plug in somebody else in his car. That's something that, it's just something that we have to deal with. The show has to go on. There's 42 other teams here, and I know people at home think, how can they do that? But you have no choice. This sport has a lot of people in it. It affects a lot of people. As sad as that is, that's the way it is.
And I mean, the thing that I was just fixing to point out, Darrell, you're about 10 miles an hour quicker in the turn 1 than you are in the turn 3, because obviously the front stretch is longer and you're turning no time, but it's about the same speed off the throttle in the middle of both ends, about 95 miles per hour.
Yeah, the thing about going down into turn 1, as we were talking about, is it's just you arch it, what we call arch it down in there. You see, down in the, you can just see kind of how the track is shaped, that you have a whole different entry into turn 1 than you do going into turn 3.
.146 miles an hour.
Boy, look at the RPMs, 9,400, 9,500 RPMs. They'll be pulling 514 gears here, 525 gears.
Yeah, they're in the 520s now, because we pulled 14s here a couple of years ago. So that was, a lot of people found out that was the key to Rusty's success here. He was pulling way, way more gear than anybody else was. And it took us a while to catch on to it. How we caught on to it was something you'll want to watch for tonight and tomorrow night, and that's the glowing brake rotor. When you see that brake rotor glowing, that means that guy's using a lot of brake, maybe too much brake, affecting the handle of the car, maybe even cause him to run out of brakes.
You just saw Bill Elliott in the 9 car, and here's Jason Keller in the 01 car, Jerry Nadeau's car, going out on the racetrack. But what I was impressed with Bill Elliott, they're pushing him in right there. Great run at Fontana last week, finished 4th. He just made a 50-lap run, straight run, which is about a half of a fuel stop here. That's what you need to do to find out what that car has and where it's going to go on into a run.
Yeah, you start with such low air pressure in the tires that you've got to run about 15 or 20 laps just to get tires up to the optimum air pressure.
Jason Keller pulls on the track. If you joined us late, Jerry Nadeau had a bad crash in the first practice session. He's been airlifted to the hospital, and Keller is his relief.
The critics agree. Lucky is television's.
Welcome back to the final hour of practice for tomorrow night's Pontiac Excitement 400 that you will see right here on SX. Fords of Jeff Burton and Kurt Busch, the Dodge of Kenny Wallace, the Chevy of Joe Nemechek, and the Ford of Greg Biffle. Top the practice chart, you're riding with Dale Earnhardt Jr., who qualified well, but he's 22nd in this practice. And here's a new gauge. Here's something for Darrell to play with.
I like this. He's not wide open until he gets almost all the way up on the straightaway. That's the green over here. And then you see over on the left there, he got his brake light. So look how long it takes him before he gets it wide open. Now the brakes are on. Ride, 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 brake, 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 brake. Starts back in the throttle.
well up on that straightaway.
Way up
it's
on the
100%
straightaway.
throttle.
Well, and that's why you can pull such a low gear here, because you really have a hard time getting it wide open as soon as you'd like to.
You know, one thing about we were talking about it earlier about the brakes here at Richmond. You're talking about the rotors glowing. You know, you'd say, well, wait a minute, it can't be as hard on brakes as a place like Martinsville, Virginia, but I beg to differ, because the thing about it, you're pulling about 100-point higher gear here. You're running off in the corner so much quicker, and that gear's not there to slow you down like at Martinsville.
Yeah, if you watch our telemetry, our brake telemetry, you'll see that at Martinsville, you're on the brakes, stop the car, get off of them. Here, you're on the brakes for a long, long time, all the way down to the center of the turn. Then you get off of them, building heat all that time.
So, hey, Jeff Hammond, give us a break.
I'll try to do that, Mike. Yeah, we were talking about it a minute ago. Yeah, this is not Martinsville, but carrying all that speed down in the corner, you still got to woke these 3,400-pound race cars up. As a matter of fact, when you walk through the garage area, you will see all the major brake manufacturers represented here trying to get these guys balanced. That's right. We talk about aero balance. Well, brake balance at a place like Richmond is very important. You see these big old front calipers, just like what you normally see in a place like Martinsville. But for a lot of these teams, trying to get that balance is so necessary. You start looking at places like the master cylinder. You start trying to adjust the balance between the front master cylinder and the rear master cylinder. The other thing you do is you take a look at your brake pads. You'll notice right here I've got it circled. This is an 03 compound for a front brake pad, and here's an 01 brake pad. Also, we have different compounds for the rear, making this balance and making it match up so that when you bail off in these corners at over almost 150 miles an hour, the car stops basically flat, sits down real smooth. You don't want the back end coming around. You don't want the front end diving over. So getting the desired brake balance is very important. Also, cooling is very important. During the course of the night, as well as tomorrow night, you'll see these brake rotors. They'll be up close to 1,400 degrees. They'll be glowing red. That's what you don't want to have happen. Again, this place is not Martinsville, but it is a short track, and it can be very abusive. Can it, DW?
Well, the thing about it is, Jeff, if you're going to err on the balance, be sure it's to the front, because too much rear brake, you go off in this front, down into turn one, kind of swinging down in there the way you do, you have to lock those rear wheels up. Around you will go.
And I mean, just look at how thick these brake pads are. And if your car's not handling well, when this race is over, that pad will almost be more completely out.
Well, the thing that Jeff also alluded to, and it's also as critical as anything else, is the cooling. The ducts, the fans, and everything that go. You see on Rusty's car there, you run maximum amount of opening to cool the brakes off, because when you're behind somebody, it's hard to get enough air into those brakes. So we use bilge pumps, brake fans, to cool the things off, as well as of the ambient air outside.
Well, let's get down to pit road, check on Steve Burns.
Well, Mike, we're checking on Jeff Gordon, a two-time winner at this racetrack. Right now, there's 8 mechanics underneath the 24 car. It's up on jack stands. Jeff described it as being tight on entry, loose from the middle off. He's having a hard time getting on the gas. When he hits the accelerator, it spins the tires. He's also saying when he gets on the brakes, the car wants to slide, and Larry McReynolds can explain more about what they're doing.
Well, with what you described and what I see going on there, what I'm pretty sure they did, they qualified with the trailing arms that holds the rear end in place in the upper holes. Well, with being loose under acceleration, the thing you can help do that is move the front part of the trailing arms down, and that helps the front forward bite, helps the rear wheels hook up on acceleration, Darrell.
And another thing you do, Larry, is put a lowering block in there. Put a lowering block under the trailing arm, which lowers the rear roll center some and does help forward bite. So there's a lot of options you got to go on to work with there. Just making the right choice is the thing.
And DW, the other thing they just did, they made a track bar adjustment. So now they've just taken the jack stands off, and they're going to get back out on the racetrack.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll just overdo it. I mean, if the car's not very good, you'll just try to go in a direction, as the crew chiefs would say, to try to figure out what the car is asking for.
Let me throw another factor at you. Today, the high temperature is about 83 degrees. Tomorrow, the high is forecast for only 68 degrees. It's going to be a very different racetrack when they run on it tomorrow night. Dick Berggren on the fastest man in practice.
And that would be Jeff Burton, and I'm standing with his crew. We are all watching the time on the computer screen in Jeff Burton's pit area. He has complained that the car is a bit tight in the center. The crew, as a result of that observation, has changed the left front spring, the right front shock absorber, and the anti-roll bar as well, to try and get the car a little bit more loose in the center. Fastest car on the racetrack. He wants to go still faster.
Yeah, and the other thing is, think about Matt Kenseth. We've talked about him the last couple of weeks. mistakes. Just because you were fast qualifying, that is not what you're going to race. That's not the setup you're going to race. You're going to make adjustments to get that car comfortable so that you can run 400 laps and have the car as good at the beginning as it is at the end.
Here's Steve on the number 2 man in points.
Dale Earnhardt Jr., and they're working on different combinations of springs and shocks to find out what the car likes. They just changed a left rear spring. Dale's talking about the condition of his brakes. So again, they're just doing a process of elimination for Dale Earnhardt Jr.
You know, Larry, I saw an interesting thing on that stack of brake pad boxes that Jeff had. You used to have to send your driver out to bed in a new set of pads. All those boxes said burnished. They're already bedded in when you take them out of the box.
They have a machine at all these brake companies, Performance Friction, Robestus, all these companies that supply brake pads, and yeah, they're ready to go, because what you would have to used to do is send your driver out there. You'd have to get on the brake, get off, get on the brake, get off. You could spend a half a practice just bedding in the brake pads.
And what's happened, Mike, is everything on the race cars that way now. The gears, the transmissions, the engines, their chassis dyno. They've been to the shaker machine so that they get the pretty close setup under the car. The reason, limited amount of practice and a limited amount of testing. You can't go to the racetrack and work on the car anytime you want to. So the more things that you can eliminate that you know are not going to give you a problem, already been in the car or been tested, the less trouble you're going to have, the more time you can spend on getting fast.
So it's decreased, the prep time is decreased, the prepared parts, and with it, of course, the expense has increased.
A good example is we used to have to go out, I mean, every owner ever drove for, take the car out and warm it up, shake it down, we would say. You had to go out the first time and just ride around for a few laps and not really drive it that hard, because you wanted to get all the parts and pieces up to temperature. Now they've got heaters and everything. Everything's got heaters. They got better fluids, and all the stuff's already been run on something, either a dyno, chassis dyno, or somewhere. So they know they're good. You're good to go, baby. Hammer down. Your first lap may be your best lap of the whole weekend.
We saw Jeff Gordon and Bobby Labonte out circling about where we left them at the last short track race, Martinsville. Pretty much nose to tail.
Welcomes you back to the Pontiac Excitement 400 final practice for the Winston Cup cars. Along with Jeff Hammond, Chris Myers, we are trackside. And a hush came over the Richmond International Raceway this afternoon when Jerry Nadeau crashed in the first practice session for tomorrow's Winston Cup race, driving the 01 car. It was about an hour and a half ago. Nadeau, the 32-year-old driver from Danbury, Connecticut here, slid into turn 1, hit the wall on the driver's side.
Yeah, he had very hard impact there, the driver's side right there. And as you see here again, the car came around really quick right there, hard up in the outside wall, and came to a pretty quick stop right there midway through 1 and 2.
And as you get spot shadow of this, the rescue workers quickly coming to the scene, those county fire and rescue workers. It took them approximately 20 minutes once this accident happened to cut Nadeau out of the car. An advanced life team using a cervical collar and assisting Nadeau's breathing got him out, taken away on a stretcher, airlifted to the nearby Medical College of Virginia, where doctors believe, according to Jim Hunter, spokesman for NASCAR, doctors believe there is potential for serious injuries. And certainly our thoughts and prayers with him, his wife. They have a newborn baby, and we will update his medical condition as soon as that information becomes available. And what's amazing, and Darrell Waltrip talked about this if you've been watching on FX, that the team has to push forward. They had to find a driver. Jason Keller, who will be in the Busch race later tonight, is in Jerry Nadeau's 01 car.
Yeah, you can see right there's the 01 on the track, but you also notice there's Ryan Pemberton on the right, kind of standing up above Steve Addington, who happens to be Jason's Busch crew chief. They are working together, and this right here again is something that's very unusual in our sport. But when somebody has trouble, everybody comes to that team's rescue, try to help them out. You can see Steve Addington, it looks like he's talking with Jason Keller, trying to understand how the car feels, what it's going to take to kind of get it ready to race tomorrow night, because you never know, it may be Jason winds up racing this race car, or we may have Jerry Nadeau back in it. But either way, this team and this crew have got to get all they can out of this final hour of practice.
And as Darrell said, it appears a little bit insensitive, but you have a job to do, and a crew chief, a member, would like to go and be with the family or the hospital. His wife, his daughter, Natalie, Jada, certainly are concerned about Jerry's condition.
Yeah, and Larry kind of touched on it. He's been in that situation. I was in that situation when Darrell got injured at Daytona many years ago. But, I knew Darrell was hurt. but I also knew I had a responsibility to a sponsor, to the rest of the team, and I knew that I'm not a doctor, so I've got to kind of trust those folks to take up the slack right there, do what they're good at, let me focus back on my job, and try to get this car ready to go. Because again, if Jerry can get back in this race car, this team has got to be ready for him to come back and get in and to have a good run tomorrow night. So
yeah, currently running a 35th. We will update any information. FX will be on the air throughout the evening with the Busch race following this final practice session. So let's go back up, rejoin Darrell Waltrip, Larry McReynolds, and Mike Joy.
Well, all of our thoughts with Jerry Nadeau right now, and of course we hope for the best. And fellows, I would think
I can't make it go any faster if I try to.
Jason Keller, I would think it is an encouraging sign that they unloaded the backup car, put a driver in it, and went out to practice.
Yeah, and he's steadily moved up the chart. He started off at the bottom, Keller did, and he's up to 35th quickest now in race trim. So he's obviously getting comfortable in the car. They're making adjustments that would suit him now. And so they're going on about their business and preparing for the race tomorrow night, hoping for the best.
Here is Ward Burton, the track record holder, who said he left a lot on the table with his qualifying lap, but here in practice he is 6th fastest.
And that's just, Mike, you just don't know how hard it is to get a fast lap in here. The track is a little treacherous when there's only one car out there at a time, and the tires are always cold, so it's really tough to cut a good fast qualifying lap and be comfortable doing it.
It looks like the race pace right now as you get on into a run is right around 22 seconds flats, 22 O's. And that's what I was impressed with Jason Keller. He's ran 22 laps, and his last lap on the racetrack was 22.06. There you see pole sitter Terry Labonte in the 5 car. And in this practice session, he is 33rd quickest. And again, it's not all about who runs that fast lap. It's who can run those fast laps the longest.
Well, it's interesting that the Chevys all qualified up front. They're not all up front in practice. The only one in the top half dozen is his teammate, the outside pole sitter for this race, Joe Nemechek.
And I tell you, the Childress Chevrolets have come to life here and getting ready to practice. Kevin Harvick, Robbie Gordon, 7th and 8th. There you see Joe Nemechek in the 25 car. Kevin Harvick right behind him. Dick Berger.
Well, Joe Nemechek has done very well in this happy hour session. The only thing they're trying to work on with that car, Larry, is it is just a bit tight in the center of the corners. They've just made a couple of adjustments under the car to try and resolve that issue. I will also tell you that crew members from this team have come to me to inquire about the condition of Joe Nemechek, or Jerry Nadeau. I'm sorry, we are all affected by what's happened here. By Jerry Nadeau, and they are worried. We're all worried and hopeful that things will work out there. He used to drive for this team and won for this team.
Well, Dick, I'm going to tell you what, though. You know, on race day and on qualifying day in that garage area, there's 45, 46 teams. Out there on the racetrack, it's dog eat dog. You're trying to outrun each other every single lap. But when you're in trouble, I mean, that's when everybody comes and gathers together around you. I'm going to go back to 1994 when Ernie Irvin hit that wall in Michigan. We were battling the 3 car, tooth and nail for the championship. We went over to turn 2 where Ernie wrecked. When we got back to our garage area, the 3 car, that crew, Chocolate Myers and that group, had unloaded our backup car for us and was putting it on jack stands to go through inspection for us.
No kidding.
Yeah, and that's why that's when we talk about a family sport. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of families that come to watch this race, but the family is really down there in the garage area. That's where, you know, it's like family members.
Yep.
We can talk about each other, and we can fight with each other if we want to, but you better not do it.
Exactly.
That's our family. That's our neighborhood. Let's go to Steve Burns on the 2nd fastest driver in happy hour.
Yeah, Kurt Busch, Mike, you know, in 4 previous starts here at Richmond, his best start was a 22nd, best finish was an 18th, and, you know, Kurt Busch is trying to win the championship, so Jimmy Fennick and his team came up here and tested, and I'll tell you how good the 97 is right now. Jeff Gordon, who was on the racetrack previously following Kurt Busch, told his own team, hey, you know what, the 97 isn't using much brake at all. That's a good thing.
And I'm going to tell you what, Darrell, you and I were talking earlier in the week. This is the man they better watch in that points championship. He moved up to 4th, 168 points out, and he is, as we say it, he's a coming.
I've heard you say, I know you've heard me say it, but that cat can win every week. Not a track we go to, he can't win on.
Kurt Busch 2nd fastest to his Roush Racing teammate Jeff Burton as happy hour rolls on at Richmond. Kurt Busch, the face of patient determination. He is 2nd on the speed chart. He leads the win list. He is 4th in points. You can hear that train a-coming.
I tell you, it's just he's really intense. He's intelligent. I like the way he figures things out. I'm talking about Kurt Busch, and this guy's not too bad himself.
Here's the man he's trying to dethrone, the reigning Winston Cup and defending race champion, Bobby Labonte, who right now, Bobby Labonte and Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart is 10th. Bobby Labonte just coming onto the racetrack, 9th fastest.
I think based on the way Bobby finished up in California last week, had Tony kept going, hadn't had an engine failure, that just been one more car in the mix there at the end of the show.
Yeah, 2 second-place finishes in a row, Martinsville and Fontana, and this is the same car that he raced at Martinsville, finished second to Jeff Gordon about 3 weeks ago.
Jeff Green, 16th on the practice chart. He and his Childress Racing teammates Kevin Harvick and Robbie Gordon, 7th and 8th. Their fortunes have all improved since qualifying. You'll see they'll start way back tomorrow night, but they practiced well.
The race trim situation's looking much better than qualifying. And you know, Harvick had been pretty quick in practice prior to qualifying.
Do a lot of teams come here and unload with their race setup?
I don't think so. You know, in Busch Series they do, but I don't think really in Winston Cup. You come here focused on 2 laps.
You know, we saw Bobby Labonte in our practice earlier when they were turning the car around and they were changing brakes and all kind of stuff. Even we always qualify what we call low fuel. We had about 5 or 6 gallons of fuel in the tank, and then we'd put the ballast in the car to get a real low center of gravity, which would make the thing really fly through the turns. It takes a little time. You got to have a lead map, as we would call it, to put everything back in the car in a hurry. But that was another thing that we did that was time consuming but made the car faster.
The little things. It's all the little things.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, though, you saw where their practice speeds are for this practice session. Much better looking than that qualifying graphic where they're going to start.
Yeah, you can see the big things, Mike, but it's all those little things that make you better. It's, you know, when we're talking about how close qualifying is and even how close they are here getting ready to race, it's the little things that make the difference.
Bill Elliott's had the most laps on this track this afternoon in post-qualifying practice.
Well, he wasn't happy with his car, and I think they're just trying to throw things at this car to get some comfort in it and get some speed in it.
This practice session extended. The first one cut short by Jerry Nadeau's crash.
There you see Ricky Rudd in the 21 car. He's 20th quickest. Talked to Pat Tryson this morning. His crew chief, brand new car, new Roush chassis. Of course, they run Roush engines.
Excuse me, Greg Biffle may have hit the wall in turn 2.
He got
I'm not sure if he damaged that car or not.
I don't think he hurt it, but he did get up there. You can see the mark on the wall.
And we're going to see that a lot tonight in the Busch Series race and tomorrow night. Don't see really any marks.
He didn't hit anything. That mark was from earlier.
This is going off into turn 1, arcing it down in there. He's up out of the groove right there.
You get up on that outside, that will not work.
Car just takes off with him.
Yoo-hoo, that will not work.
One of his Roush Racing teammates, Matt Kenseth, comes in here as the point leader and 11th on the chart. Steve?
Mike, Matt Kenseth won here in September from the 25th starting position. He'll start 18th tomorrow night. They came in, changed rear shocks, adjusted the track car, and back out onto the racetrack he went. He described his car as pretty good.
You know, when he starts that far to the front, he's a threat. There's where his teammates are in this practice.
And when he says his car is pretty good, that could be bad news too. There's one thing about a little racetrack, smaller racetrack. You know if you're good or not. You don't have to go out there and, you know, say, well, if I had more horsepower, if I had more aerodynamics, if I had more this, more. Here, you know from that steering wheel and that seat that your hiney sitting down in that seat tells you if you're going to be any good or not.
Is it funny, Darrell, here that you are turning at the start-finish line?
Well, you turn all the way down this front straightaway. You come off of turn 4, and you really, a lot of times, you'll almost hit the wall right at the start-finish line, and then you just kind of roll it way on down in there. I mean, you're turning all the way down the front. That's what makes it so physical. That's what wears you out. You're in a turn forever here. The old neck used to give you, but these seats, the way they're made now, your neck doesn't bother you like it used to with the Hans device and the seats. But, man, your neck used to get tired here.
The big long arc, and you know, this looks like, you talk about race trim. Look at how many cars are out on the track
well,
right now.
reason is they know there's only just a few minutes left in this practice session. If you're going to make those final adjustments, you have to get out there and do it right now.
Plus, we're right around race time. If you're going to go out right now, I mean, we'll be starting the race this time tomorrow night. So you want to see what your car feels like right now.
More than half the field out there right now. Rusty Wallace and Ryan Newman are 23rd and 25th on the chart right now. Newman will line up 5th tomorrow night. Rusty 17th.
In his rookie season, Ryan Newman here in the 12 car last year finished 2nd in both races. Of course, Rusty Wallace, he pretty much owned this place at one time, has 6 wins here, and we're being told there's about 3 to 4 minutes left in this practice. So this will be the final run for all these cars. They're going to get those engine guys that plug check, let them look at the distribution, and get those tire temperatures.
Now, the big difference tomorrow night, Larry, temperature. The high tomorrow is going to be 12 to 14 degrees cooler than the high temperature today. So how do you take what you learn practicing at 80 degrees and turn it over because you're going to race at about 60 degrees?
Well, what you have to do right now, and I think that's what a lot of them doing, we've heard Steve Burns talk about a lot of them making track bar adjustments, is you find out how the car responds to adjustments you can make on pit road. But the biggest thing about this racetrack, when it cools down, it's just going to have overall more grip. The whole race car is going to grip the racetrack better.
I think really, truly, if you're tight now, you'll be tighter tomorrow night. That'd be the biggest thing. You can free the car up a little bit more knowing it's going to be a night race. But if you're too tight right now, you're in big trouble tomorrow night. You don't want to be tight on Saturday night.
And why would that be?
Well, that's what an old friend of mine told me.
I thought a song was coming here. I really did.
Had all the makings of it.
Yeah, it did. Jason Keller, again, if you joined us late in this first practice session, Jerry Nadeau had a hard crash at the turn 2 wall, was airlifted from the racetrack. Jason Keller nominated as the relief driver. Jada and Natalie, our hearts and our thoughts are with you, and we're hoping for the best. Down to Chris Myers.
And with Jeff Hammond, again, we will keep you updated throughout the evening here on FX with any medical developments regarding a 32-year-old Jerry Nadeau. And Jeff, this track, any short track, but in particular Richmond, I mean, known for hard hits. Guys like Bobby Hamilton of the Truck Series, Johnny Benson last year have come back from these hits in the past.
No, really, you talk about guys like Derek Cope last year. He hit so hard that he literally ripped the body right off the race car, and we didn't know how bad he was hurt, but because of the construction and a lot of the new safety conditions that are inside the cockpits of these race cars, a lot of these drivers are able to come back the very next week and race. And again, that's what we're hoping will happen here as far as Jerry Nadeau is concerned. You know, he was, had his bell rung pretty hard right there, and they took him out in a helicopter, and hopefully he'll be back tomorrow.
All right, so Jason Keller in his car. Let's check in with Dick Berggren on the latest there. Dick?
Well, Keller right now is 35th on the speed chart in Jerry Nadeau's car. Getting quiet out on the racetrack as we're getting close to the end of practice. The crew says that he is consistent in the car, about the same speed lap after lap.
All right, thanks, Dick. As we got to look at Jerry Nadeau's car. Jeff, how about the idea? We've heard about safer, softer walls. One of the tracks that at least has been discussed has been this track here in Richmond.
Well, obviously because of some of the hard licks we've seen here, this is a prime candidate for those types of new conditions and everything like that. But NASCAR is working very closely right now to try to make sure they fix all that. So it's really a matter of time. NASCAR is aware of the importance of safer walls, but it's just going to take some time. They don't want to implement them and create a worse situation than what they've got now.
And again, Jason Keller, by the way, will start second tonight in the Busch Series race, and that's coming up here in just about 30 minutes. This weekend, a full weekend of racing, continuing with Busch Series racing from Richmond. That's coming up in about 30 minutes. The pre-race show in just a few moments. And Tony Stewart tomorrow night looking to defend his title under the lights for Winston Cup racing in the Pontiac Excitement 400 on FX. NASCAR continuing across the Fox networks. And a look at the front row, Terry Labonte on the pole.
Yeah, two teammates from Hendrick Motorsports right there. Front row Joe and Terry Labonte.
Hendrick Motorsports dominating. In fact, Chevy, 7 of the top 10. For Jeff Hammond, our entire crew will keep you updated on the condition of Jerry Nadeau and Busch Racing coming your way in a moment on FX.